Yeah, on the Mishnah walk, we're all aware of Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth, on the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light, Key Avot's wisdom shining bright. The Torah treasure to share, on the Mishnah walk, we're all aware of Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth, on the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light, Key Avot's wisdom shining bright. The Torah treasure to share, on the Mishnah walk, we're all aware of Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth, on the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light, Key Avot's wisdom shining bright. The Torah treasure to share, on the Mishnah walk, we're all aware of Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned, on the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages, we find our way on the Mishnah walk, every every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. We'll Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, every single day. The Mishnah walk, every single day. Mishnah walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah walk, wisdom is yearned. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah Walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, every single day. The Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. Rabbi Akiva's teachings are guiding light. Raki Avot's wisdom shining bright. The old Torah treasure to share. On the Mishnah Walk, we're all aware. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. From tractate to tractate we roam, unpacking the meaning, making it our home. In the words of the sages we find our way. On the Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, every single day. The Mishnah Walk, every single day. Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul. The Mishnah Walk, a road of discovery, where ancient texts meet the heart's inquiry. Every step a lesson learned. On the Mishnah Walk, wisdom is yearned. The Mishnah Walk, a journey of the soul, where the love of learning makes us whole. May every step bring us closer to the truth. On the Mishnah Walk, with hearts like roots.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Mevorach. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Doing okay.
Oh, we have one more Jew than we had, or maybe two more
Yeah.
Jews, right?
Yeah, I think we have
Yes.
two more Jews in the group today.
Baruchot Mevorach. I can't speak. Baruchot Mevorachot. I never speak in Hebrew in the feminine. Baruchot
Rabbi,
Mevorach. No, how about
Rabbi,
yeah?
you have the pronunciation for our latest Jew in the group here?
The pronunciation. What do you mean? Oh, for her name?
Yeah. I'm
Hodaya
thinking
Beruah?
I need I need a nickname because for the
We can
English
just call her
audience.
Hodi.
Hodi. Well, what
Hodi.
is
Hodi also means Indian.
Well, how
Whatever.
did you say it again? Heather, you want to tell us how to pronounce your new
I will
pronunciation?
probably say it wrong because I've noticed that the other rabbi that I study with, he has been repeating it back to me each time I say it, so I assume I'm saying it wrong.
Possibly.
You're
So,
probably in good
Hodaya.
company. Say it again.
Hodaya.
Yeah, that's the way it's normally said. Yeah, Hodaya.
Okay. I don't know why he
A
keeps saying it
little
back to me
softer
then.
on
but
the little
You might
softer
be
on the
saying
D, is that
Hodaya
it?
or something. Hodaya.
I don't know.
Maybe. Might be
Hmm.
Ashkenazi pronunciation. I don't know.
Hodaya.
Which Rav is it? Is it Rav Haim Ovadia or is it
Rabbi Uzi.
Rabbi Uzi? I
He's,
don't
I
know.
think, Sephardic, so
Okay.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
not sure if there's a dagesh or not in the Dalet, but that could make a slight difference. But those are minute.
Right.
You know, modern Hebrew is simple. It's simplified.
Yeah.
Bora, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Happy to get the week going. I'm going to share my screen. We'll go ahead and say our introductory prayer. Heather, would you like to do it?
Yes.
And translate? You up for it? We'll help
I think
you.
so. I think
Go
so.
right ahead.
Yehi ratzon milefanecha Adonai Elohai. May it be favorable before you, Adonai, the powerful authority over me. Shelo ekoshel bidvar halacha. That I not stumble in a matter of halacha or Jewish law. Shelo omar al tameh tahor wa'al tahor tameh. That I not say regarding that which is impure, that it is pure, and regarding that which is pure, that it is impure. Wa'al mutar asur, wa'al asur mutar. And regarding that which is permitted, that it is forbidden, and regarding that which is forbidden, that it is permitted. Wa'al ekoshel bidvar halacha, and that I shall not stumble in a matter of halacha. Wayismehu bi havarai, and they shall rejoice with me, my friends. Wa'al yikashlu havarai bidvar halacha, and that my friends may not stumble in a matter of halacha. Wa'esmah bahem, and I shall rejoice with them.
Mitsuyan, kol hakavod. Excellent. Everybody say Mazal Tov. That was a perfect execution.
Mazal tov.
Mamash Tov, Haval al Azman. It's a waste of time. That's a funny Israeli idiom. Haval al Azman. It's like saying it's a waste of time to try to explain how great it was. I had this pulled up and now it's gone. What the heck just happened? Okay. 293, right? Restrictive commandment or passive commandment 293, I believe.
Ken.
All right, B'chavod. Go right ahead, B'chavod. Whoever would like to begin.
Not to have pity on a pursuer, rather he should be killed before he kills or rapes the person he is pursuing. As Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 12 states, and you shall cut off her hand, show no pity. Miswa hala'ah.
So in traditional classical Judaism, they do not interpret this passage the way that non-Jews have often interpreted it. And bear in mind, the difference in the interpretation preceded modern norms of political correctness by 2,000 years. So it makes no sense to say that the ancient Jewish understanding of this verse is in reaction to a defensive apologetic reaction to modern sensibilities. That makes no sense. So keep that in mind. There are idioms, figures of speech in Hebrew that somebody who approaches the Bible and tries to interpret it, having not learned the meaning of the text and idioms of Hebrew from those who actually wrote the Bible and preserved it, they're going to grossly misunderstand passages. In contrast to what would be the case if they would actually learn from the people who wrote and preserved the text. This is a classic example. And keep in mind, this is not in response to modern sensibilities, the way that we have interpreted this verse, because our more reasonable interpretation precedes modern sensibilities by at least 2,000 years. You will find this understanding in the Mishnah and the Talmud. All right, halakha haba'a. Slicha, miswa haba'a.
Ur Sheli. 294. Not to punish a person forced to commit a sin, as Deuteronomy 22:26 states, do not do anything to the maiden.
Referring to one who was coerced, a woman who was forced to have relations by rape.
Mitzvah haba'a.
I don't remember the term, but I'll go next. Not to
Tor,
take
say tor, T-O-R, tor,
Tor,
sheli.
Sheli. Torah
My
Sheli.
turn. Yeah, literally you're saying turn, mine.
Okay. Shortly, not to take a ransom from a murderer, as Numbers 35:31 states, do not take a ransom for the life of a murderer.
Lessons to learn. Miswa haba'a, next commandment. Miswa haba'a.
Not to take a ransom in return for exile for a person who kills accidentally, as Numbers chapter 35, verse 32 states, and do not take a ransom for having to flee to his refuge city. Miswa haba'a.
297.
Go
ahead.
right ahead, Chavod.
You can take one.
Not to neglect a person in mortal danger, as Leviticus 19, verse 16 states, do not stand still in the face of mortal danger. Right? And this is honestly a horrible translation. It says you should not stand idly. Idly would be implied, but you shouldn't just stand there about the blood or when the blood of your neighbor is about to be shed. It's explicitly your fellow man, your associate, your neighbor. And this just completely didn't translate it. Good. It's always a good thing to learn Hebrew.
So in halacha, we have the obligation to defend others.
If you see that they're in mortal danger, absolutely. It's a Torah commandment to try to save somebody who's in mortal danger. If it's going to lead to your own demise, then it's not necessarily the case that you should step in. Not necessarily. And if it would be that even when you would risk death yourself, and perhaps by moral principles, it would be proper to step in and save them despite risking loss of your own life. But if you don't, because of fear or whatever reason, that you're coerced from not doing it, even if it's non-ideal reasons, you're not held liable. And that's always the case. And we found this just up here with regard, a person is not punished for having committed a sin that they were coerced to do. That's a general principle in Torah Judaism. But certainly, there's no excuse if we're able to save someone's life without our own lives being taken. Absolutely, if you're faced with this, that's a Torah duty. It's a basic ethical requirement of the Torah. And that does not apply to people who would pursue our own lives, right? So let's not mistake Torah principles of the preciousness of life for modern radical ideological beliefs that you should sacrifice your own life for people who are, who hate you, who want to destroy you. That's ridiculous. We should not, especially not sacrifice the lives of young kids, young boys who had only reached adulthood in the last year in order to protect the lives of people who would like to see us dead. In the case of sending young Israeli men to on the battlefield on foot in the midst of a hornet's nest where everybody, even the so-called civilians, want to murder them. And we do that in order to minimize their civilian casualties. That is not what that's talking about. Right? We don't need, to the contrary. Let's keep going.
Ura Sheli. What about 298? Not to leave obstacles, as Deuteronomy 22:8 states, lest you bring blood upon your house.
All right, and a better translation would be stumbling block here. And this is usually translated as stumbling block. That also makes more sense here. You could say obstacles to observing Torah, but something that would, well, everybody knows what stumbling block is. Yeah, I think that's a pretty well-known term, right?
Don't set up the stumbling block in your household for others to
Right.
stumble. Yeah.
Right, and that's a proverbial stumbling block, not just literal.
Is it tortially?
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Not to mislead an unsuspecting person, as Leviticus 19:14 states, do not place a stumbling block before the blind.
Not to add lashes when whipping a person liable for such punishment, as Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 3 states, do not add lashes, lest by giving him this additional punishment.
And of course, this is a commandment to courts, not to vigilantes.
Ursheli. 301. Not
Yes,
to
sir.
gossip. As Leviticus 19:16 states, do not go around as a gossiper among your people. Mitzvah haba'ah.
Tortially, not to bear hatred in one's heart, as Leviticus 19:17 states, do not hate your brother in your heart.
Next commandment.
Not to embarrass any Jewish person, as Leviticus continues, you shall surely rebuke your neighbor and not bear a sin because of him.
And it doesn't explicitly say Jewish. It says, Me Yisrael. And not everybody who is under the category of Israel is Jewish. There is a concept of a Eved Kanani, a type of servitude. In fact, the only kind of servitude in Judaism that involves a non-Israelite requires that non-Israelite would be circumcised and immersed and join the covenant of the people of Israel. So although he doesn't become what we call Jewish, and this is with regard to duties, like legal duties, legal obligations, but he does become a member of the people of Israel, and he becomes obligated. The male would become obligated in the same commandments that a female Jewish woman would be obligated in. And that's not with regard to sexual things, of course. But there are nuances to legal status in halakha that may be a little more detailed than most people would assume. But this is not the topic for today. And suffice it to say, there is a lot of discussion among poskim as to whether statements such as this, how they would relate, whether or not they would relate to non-Israelites who have accepted the Torah upon themselves in some form or another, but due to their ignorance don't have a proper grasp of it, such as Christians or Muslims. And so there are much more universal applications of this commandment that many Orthodox, traditional classical rabbis have applied this commandment to, as being broader than what this translation would lend you to think. So you have to keep in mind when the Torah was given, and really until in human history and Israelite history until relatively recently, if you weren't a Jew, you were basically a barbarian. That's not to say there were never nice barbarians, but we weren't expected to have normal friendships with barbarians. Like, people were sacrificing their babies to idols and such. So clearly, although we have theological disagreements with Christians and Muslims, but on a cultural level, on an ethical level, they are far more similar to us than the ancient pagans used to be. Very easy to forget that kind of a thing. Next commandment,
I'll take it. 304. Not to take revenge, as Leviticus 19:18 states, do not take revenge.
Mihababator. Who's next in line? Mihababator.
Tortially,
Yes, ma'am. Chavod.
Not to bear a grudge, as Leviticus states, do not bear a grudge.
Oh, and I meant to say also, with regard to where it says not to bear hatred, no. Where was that? Here. Not to embarrass any Jewish person. I meant to add that one shouldn't think this excludes a person who has already fully committed their life to serving the God of Israel and fully embraced the Torah and has fully accepted the people of Israel as their own people, but they have not yet gone through a formal legal process of immigrating into the people of Israel, i.e. conversion. One should not imagine that just because no fault of their own, but rather due to the neglect of leadership in parts of the Jewish world, that just because the leadership has neglected to fulfill their duty to formally bring them in, that this doesn't apply to them. All the more so it applies to them. As Maimonides said in Hilchot Melachim u'Melchamotehem, that the Torah is the inheritance of Israel and all those who desire to become an Israelite. And such people
Right.
should become as soon as possible. Yes, sir.
Can you scroll back to 303 there?
Yes, sir.
Is there a nuance we're missing? Because embarrassing a Jewish person almost sounds like you can embarrass everyone else, though. Or
that's what
maybe
I've been
the word
talking about.
embarrass has a different understanding in the Hebrew here. Because you treat everybody right.
It basically means to embarrass. It doesn't literally mean that, but that's what it is referring to, undoubtedly. It's literally saying you should not whiten the face of a man from Israel. And also, I don't know what the you should also, anytime you have a question like this, you should also look at what the accurate manuscripts of the Mishneh Torah state, because we are using the translation and the text provided by Eliyahu Talger. And there are a number of, especially on semi-controversial or controversial parts of the Mishneh Torah, or things that aren't controversial in the Mishneh Torah, but other people turn them into controversies. Sometimes you will find significant word added. I don't know if that's the case here. I could take the time to look it up, but I'm going to save us time. But that's what I was mentioning earlier, that our sages post-Talmud, the post-Talmudic sages, have spoken about these sorts of statements. When anything along these lines are found in the Talmud, they've spoken about them stating that the era in which the Torah was given and in which the sages of Israel operated was an era in which you did not have a reality of entire communities and countries of people who had accepted the God of Israel, and that includes the ethical behavior of the God of Israel. That did not exist. So when they would write things such as this, they had no concept. The reality didn't exist that there would be people behaving ethically who are not Jewish. That was something that simply didn't exist.
So in other words, basically this is do not embarrass anyone would be.
So no, the idea is that, there would be a distinction. Not that there's no distinction. There would be a distinction. But that distinction is for people who are essentially barbarians, which most people, not some people, are still barbarians. I mean, it's not comfortable to say, but some people are. Go ahead.
An example, a Jew who inadvertently sins, you should not embarrass them and shame them versus someone who just offered their kid to Molech.
Correct. You should absolutely shame someone like that. Absolutely. But the Torah assumes we don't even have social interaction with those kinds of people.
Yeah.
Also, you will find in the laws of servitude, which there's an entire book of halakha regarding it. It's an entire section in the Talmud. So you don't just have like a few verses in the Torah and you just lead to a bunch of assumptions. Our sages deliberated on these topics. So also in those laws regarding servitude, when a non-Israelite is captured in war and they agreed to become a servant of Israel, and they have to agree. You cannot force them to become a servant of Israel. They could become a servant, or they could just keep the laws of Noah, and we would give them to some other people, even sell them, right? And I'm not saying this is something that should be done in modern society, but that is what it states. So my point is, with regard to this, that you find in those laws that if they accept servitude and they want to be a servant of Israel, they leave the category of a non-Israelite, but yet they're not yet a Jew. And I was mentioning that to point out that there is a distinction between being a Jew and being an Israelite in certain limited contexts, but that's too broad of a topic to get into right now. How is it relevant to what you said? Well, in those laws regarding servitude, there are a number of halachot, a number of rabbinic institutions with regard to how we relate to a servant that seem pretty clear to be intended to encourage that servant to want to become a full Israelite in the fullest sense. Because if they fully accept the Torah, if they do certain things, even without explicitly stating they accept the Torah, then the master is to release them from servitude, in which case they immediately become a full member of the people of Israel. So what I'm stating is that there are certain legal regulations with regard to a servant of Israel that are intended to make them feel kind of awkward or uncomfortable in certain social settings, that if they do something different, meaning if they would be encouraged, which they probably would be, to want to be Jewish instead of remaining a servant, then if they do certain simple actions, such as if they even put on tefillin, then the owner is required to release them. And they're released of the debt, and if there was a debt, for example, in addition to the servitude, and they become a full Israelite. So that's even without the free, how do you say it? Even without the master wanting to do it, the sages of Israel required that they would free them, even if the master didn't want to, if they do certain things. But those certain things are the certain details of behavior toward the servant, I think, are intended to kind of make them feel awkward, i.e., embarrass them, so as to encourage them to not want to be a servant, so as to encourage them to want to be a full Israelite. And then if they do actions X, Y, Z, and there's a number of them, then the master would be required to free them. That's a whole different topic, though. Let's go back. We only have a few more. We stated grudge. Okay, here we go. 306. I believe that's the last.
Not to take a mother bird together with the young, as Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 6 states, do not take the mother bird together with the young.
Right. Who's these? I'm gonna grab a bottle of water real fast. It's right here.
Okay.
All right. So what's the topic for the day?
Well, let's see. Do we have another commandment we're going to address in more detail?
I think we decided we were going to start doing those at another time.
Yeah,
Excusez-moi.
I like
okay.
it. I'm very much an advocate, but I got the impression that some of our members had expressed something, and they should take priority. You know, like it's
That's
great to
true.
read the Torah every single day. If we could read the full Torah every single day, that'd be great. But the question is, what can a person handle? Is it realistic? And we have to deal with that. You know, that's the reality at hand. So let's do it.
All right, let
You're
me
encouraged to read it in
share.
your own time. Go ahead.
I'm going to share my screen, and I think Heather's going to bring one up here.
Cheers to microplastics. I mean, nanoplastics.
All right, right, can we see that?
I believe so.
So American Independence Day, the 4th of July, is on Friday this year. What should we know or think about regarding how to handle situations that may arise because of this?
Okay. So I think they're asking about barbecues specifically, perhaps also maybe other patriotic events, maybe standing in front of a flag and pledging allegiance, maybe that. Can you guys think of any other things they may be alluding to?
Fireworks in the evening.
Ah, okay. Excellent. Anything
Trav-
else?
Traveling and visiting family. So
Yeah, because
kosher.
it's almost Shabbat. That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, people usually have their celebrations in the after, like the late afternoon or the evening. So let's touch on those. The first one with regard to barbecues and food, the best protocol, when feasible, and usually it is feasible, is to let people know in advance. You don't have to live in a cave in order to keep Torah. If your concept of Torah requires you to live in a cave, it could be that the depravity of the people around you actually make it such that you do need to live in a cave. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the issue. Typically, at least in Western society, you can interact in a healthy social way with the people around you while also keeping kosher. But you need to know your own disposition. You need to know what you can handle insofar as temptation is concerned. And not all people are the same. It would be unfair for someone who is tempted by alcohol and has had a history of alcoholism. It would be unfair for them to say that the entire world must now abstain from alcohol. No, that's not the way it is. And that's the case with everything. So if you're so tempted by the smell of unkosher hamburgers, and I'm not a big meat eater, but I can tell you, to be honest, even though I'm not a big meat eater, I love the smell of hamburger on a grill, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's kosher. But I'm really not going to be the slightest tempted to eat it. I'm not. And I'm sure that there are people who will be, even if they believe that they shouldn't eat it. So if that is you, you probably shouldn't be there. I'm sorry, but you probably shouldn't be there if you think there's a real chance that you would eat it. But there are a lot of people who enjoy hamburgers who wouldn't be tempted to eat it, or it wouldn't be a serious temptation. And they know that they would not eat it. So you have to be intellectually honest with yourself. Just be intellectually honest. You're accountable to yourself and to God. You know, other people don't need to know the sincerity of your heart, but God knows and you know. So just be honest with yourself. But if they're cooking unkosher meat and you know that you can handle it and there's no real place for concern that you would eat the unkosher meat, then there's nothing wrong with attending. There's nothing wrong as long as it's not a festival of idolatry, you know. Then go, and you don't have to be there for a long time if you feel uncomfortable or whatever. If maybe they do something else that you do take issue with, just because there's unkosher food doesn't mean you can't be there. And there may be something you can eat that wouldn't be a big deal for them to provide. So again, just let them know in advance. If they're good friends, they will almost certainly be understanding and they would be honored to provide something that you can eat, such as fruit, you know, some kind of a salad. Let them know not to put bacon bits in the salad. People are usually
Accommodating.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. Happy to be accommodating. With regard to the flag, I don't feel comfortable standing in front, facing a flag and pledging with my heart, hand on my heart to it. I will not say that that's idolatry, because nobody in American society, at least not normally, are intending to serve the flag. Right? Someone might say that in some symbolic sense, but nobody, when they pledge allegiance to a flag, are they intending to do service to the flag. They're not directing service to the flag. or rather they're affirming their commitment to the principles that it represents. That's different from actually doing an act of service to that flag itself. Some people may have that in mind. I don't think most people do. However, for myself, I think it looks too similar for my comfort. And when you have any doubt with regard to a violation of Torah, especially if it regards idolatry, err on the side of caution. If not because there's a true Torah concern, halacha concern, then at least for the sake of your conscience, you know. But you can pledge allegiance to the flag without looking at a flag, right? There's different ways of doing it, and you can pledge allegiance to the flag of the U.S. without standing there physically doing it. Like, really, in a truly patriotic sense, that's what you're doing. You don't pledge to the flag only when you're standing there in front of it. You pledge allegiance to the principles that it stands for every day of the week, even when you don't see it. So you can mention that to people who may think you're unpatriotic for standing with everybody and facing a physical flag, right? I'm with you if you feel uncomfortable with it. Regarding driving, again, you need to let them know in advance that you're not going to be traveling around on Shabbat. There are ways that you could probably travel on Shabbat that do not cause a Torah violation, but the mainstream establishment in the religious Jewish world would hold that that's strictly prohibited. There is a difference between doing so within city limits and doing so outside of city limits. But even outside of city limits, at least in developed countries, it's often not the same status as out of city limits in the Talmudic era. But we're not going to get into that right now. Suffice it to say, the ideal is that you would not be traveling around on Shabbat, on Friday night. The place is to be at the Beit Knesset, in the synagogue, or at your home with your family. Maybe if you get there if you're able to get there before Friday sundown, you can spend the night with your family members. See how flexible they are. And if you know that they probably won't be okay with it, well, at least you asked and expressed to them your desire to be with them. And now the onus is on them,
There are people who, you mentioned kind of a pagan or whatever, who look at anything that's not in Tanakh as pagan. Any holiday, so they would, in other words, they're a little strong on condemning anyone who does go and watch fireworks or celebrates an event, and I get doing that, but I don't get wanting to live in a country and ignore the things that they celebrate, that they've done, while you enjoy the freedoms of that country, especially.
Yeah, I'm with you, completely with you. With regard to fireworks, there's no prohibition to see fireworks. Absolutely no prohibition. You can see fireworks.
Lighting a fire on Shabbat.
You're not doing it. You're not lighting the fire.
Yeah, right.
There's the question of seeing them. Somebody else is doing it, and it's already pre-organized. Especially if it's a formal firework display. They're not, even if you wanted to, they're not going to let you go there and light the fireworks.
So if I get it right, you set up your fireworks and you say, "Hey, can you come over here and light off my fireworks for me?"
Well, that's not what I'm saying. That is not.
Yeah, I know.
But if you made plans before and you have a non-Israelite who would be willing to do it, if you're doing it in advance, then you're not going to be liable for lighting the fireworks. I don't think that's proper to do. But if it's like a municipal display or something that they're doing regardless of you, there's no issue with seeing that and enjoying it. It's beautiful. If they're doing it in honor of a false god, as an act of service to a false god, you're forbidden from enjoying it. You should not even be watching it. That's not what's going on in the U.S. It's just not. It might happen actually in some countries. I don't know that it does, but it could. I could see it happening in countries where the social norm is to serve idols. So you would want to be careful if you're visiting in a country like that and you see firework display. Here, it's not an issue. Laura has her hand raised.
Yes, I have. My family's been planning an 85th anniversary party for my mother over the 4th of July weekend. And
Okay.
so I'm traveling up there on Thursday, coming back Sunday, so I don't have to actually drive to there. But the party, so we're all staying in the same hotel, but the party's not at the hotel, it's at a park.
Okay.
Everybody's going to the party. So I was wondering, since everybody's going, I could just get in the car with somebody and ride along, and that would not be breaking the Sabbath, would it?
It
Because
wouldn't. It
they're
would
already
not be
going.
breaking. But if you ask your average so-called ultra-Orthodox rabbi, they're going to say that's completely forbidden, that's breaking Shabbat, and they're not going to give you any nuanced explanation. But it's
Okay.
not. It's not breaking. In order to make that assertion, they have to make a lot of assumptions and a lot of false equivalencies. If you could, somebody can have the door open, and they don't even have to have it open specifically for you. If there's more than one person getting in, somebody else is going to open the door. You can just jump in with them, and someone else can close it. But there's also the question of lights and usage of electricity on Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
Electrical lights are not fire. They are not fire. That's not to say that we should disrespect the established practice to treat it as if it's fire in communities that treat it as if it's fire. But even in respecting community practices in places like that, that doesn't mean that we need to deny reality. Electricity is not fire. They do bring up other issues with regard to electricity. They say that it's like a makaba patish, like the final blow of creating an object. There are major poskim who have disagreed with that, but the thing is that their voices have been drowned out by people who are looking for a way to make things more severely strict. And what they're doing is essentially painting a target around the arrow that's already planted, that they already stuck in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I going to say? Yeah, so it's not like a makaba patish. It's not like the final blow when you flip a switch, for example, on a light, because that is what it was made to do. The light switch was already made. All you're doing is allowing the flow of the current to go back and forth. It's no different from opening the water faucet. You're not creating the water faucet when you turn on the water faucet. You're not creating the door when you open your door and a flow of wind flows through your house from the door to a window. That's all that's going on. And the same people who hold that this is creating a new object hold that you're allowed to open up a folding chair on Shabbat. Well, why aren't you creating a tent? Never mind that it would be a temporary tent anyway, but why isn't that creating a tent? Because number one, that's not the function of it. And number two, uh, and why are you not creating a chair also? Because it's not functionally a chair, but it is already a chair. That's just the way you use a folding chair. You know, there's a ton of examples like this. It just does not hold water, and they have fear that if you permit this, even if maybe it's technically permitted, but you allow it, then there's going to be a slippery slope effect. You know, maybe for some communities that's true, but you still should not forbid and say that it's forbidden from the Torah, something that's not. You can say it's forbidden by our local custom. You can say it's forbidden rabbinically by those rabbis that we've accepted upon ourselves. But don't say it's forbidden from the Torah when it's not. To do that is itself a severe violation of the Torah. Bal tosif, you should not add to the commandments of the Torah. Who says that turning on a light switch is more severe than the prohibition of adding to the Torah? It's not. It's not. That's a severe problem. So abstaining from light switches, abstaining from using electrical devices on Shabbat, you know, by touching them, not just passively using them. These things, I think, are wonderful for creating an atmosphere of Shabbat and focusing on the actual purpose of Shabbat. but to basically turn it into an idol to the point that you will violate other Torah commandments because of this non-Torah commandment, I think is really, it draws near to turning it into an idol, making some non-Torah commandment stringency into an end unto itself, even if it defeats the purpose of keeping Torah by causing you to dishonor your parents or do not strengthen your children's connection to Torah. If it's leading you to ostracizing people, it's not right. And all we have to do is look at the majority of the Jewish people and how they've related to this, the effect that these kinds of stringencies have had on the majority of the Jewish people. So unless we think that God gave Israel a type of Torah that only 5% of the Jewish people can possibly somewhat keep, then I think we need to re-examine that whole topic. So yeah, and all that was with your question about getting in the car. It's not an issue. Maybe you're carrying something in a place that there's no eruv. Well, is the car more than 10 handbreadths above the ground? I think it is. Probably is. And if it's not, you can find a car that is. A lot of cars are more than 10 handbreadths above the ground. So then there's no issue of transferring. There's a lot of different things with regard to this, with regard to the issue of technology and traveling on Shabbat, and the laws of Shabbat. There are a lot of aspects to it that are just simply ignored because people just want things to be a certain way, and they're completely unwilling to look at things for what they really are. So, are you going from the hotel to where this other location is? Is it within the same city?
Yes.
You're not passing through like a 2-kilometer space where there are no houses whatsoever?
No.
Okay, and even if you were to, well, then you have the question of, are the cars on the highway considered domains? So there are a lot of questions that people just assume are established halachic realities in an era where we have no great Sanhedrin. That's presumptuous, if not rebellious, on the part of those who should know better. Emmanuel had his hand raised. Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning. Along those lines, on your roof, is it okay to go on a walk, like say, let's maybe a mile radius around my house?
Of course. But do you live in the middle of nowhere?
No, it's main city.
You can walk all the way to the other end of your city and back, and that's even according to the mainstream black hat establishment.
Okay.
There's no issue. But I would not make this something that takes up your whole day, because if it's something that is relaxing to you and you don't often get the opportunity to do it, you could even view it as part of the mitzvah of enjoying Shabbat. Oneg Shabbat, Aneg in Shabbat. And that is a rabbinic requirement, that we enjoy Shabbat. But we should not forget that Shabbat is not made just for our personal subjective enjoyment, but also for spending time with our family and for studying Torah, serving Hashem in thought and meditation as well. But two things can be done at the same time, right? There's no issue with that. That's wonderful.
How does carrying affect that?
If there's no eruv, then don't have anything in your pockets. Leave your key somewhere near your house, in a hidden location. But there's a whole debate regarding eruv. I know there are plenty of people in the black hat, ultra-Orthodox, in quotes, world that would say, what debate? There's no debate. Yeah, for those who shut their ears, there's no debate, but there's a debate. They've clearly never learned the laws of Sanhedrin, that the least esteemed sages are those who are supposed to be heard first in the context of the great Sanhedrin. All the more so when we don't have a Sanhedrin. You should hear other opinions, but they don't. So I do encourage you to listen to other opinions regarding eruv. Rav Chaim Ovadia has a lot of online lectures you can hear to give you an idea of how more diverse the opinions are regarding an eruv actually are, even in the context of classical Judaism. We're not talking about in the Reform movement or even the conservative movement. Within the traditional Jewish world, there are multiple views regarding a number of aspects of Eruv and carrying on Shabbat, but they almost never get heard. They get brushed under the rug because they threaten the establishment, which affects the pockets of certain isolated individuals who lord themselves over entire communities. And most people don't even realize that's what's happening. I'm going to get in trouble.
It's wearing a watch considered carrying an object.
No. That's like it's like something that's adorning you. You're not carrying it. You're
Okay.
wearing it like a garment.
Yeah, I just wasn't. I've been taking it off whenever I just go on walks, but I
Well,
wasn't sure.
if you weren't sure and it involves a Torah violation and you're really not sure, then you did the right thing. But it's not an issue by the majority. The majority in the religious world don't consider that an issue. Now, with
Okay.
regard to carrying.
Good to know.
All
I
right.
was waiting to ask this question for a while, so.
Oh, good.
I'm
I
glad
know
it's
we had
another one.
several other questions, and we could talk more about
Okay.
Independence Day, but I think we should. Oh, I did want to touch on the question of holidays. Victor had mentioned some people are like considered any holiday that's not mentioned in the Bible to be like heresy, or I know where they're coming from because they probably had been celebrating holidays and worship of something other than the God of creation half of their life or all their childhood. So now they've gone to the opposite extreme. But there's precedent in the Bible for the legitimacy of celebrating holidays that are not explicitly commanded in the Torah. We see the prophets of Israel referring to them, significant days, special days, hashtag, i.e. holidays. We have it with the holiday of Purim, and we have it with the fast days mentioned in the book of Zechariah, I think. There's precedent for that. The problem is when we say that those special occasions, special celebrations, have the same status of authority as the holidays commanded by God, or if we consider them, even if we don't say that they have the same authority, but in practice we esteem them more highly than the holy days that God commanded. That's the problem. But if you recognize that it's just a custom to commemorate something that unites your community and it's something positive, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. All right, let's keep going.
All right. We had a question on Facebook, definitely shifting gears here. And yeah, I've seen this presented and by different people different ways, but why does the state of Israel think that they are Israel? They are not committed to, I could almost leave it right there. They are
There's
not
a lot of
committed to being the
ridiculous
lost
assumptions.
tribes. Yeah, there's a lot being added to, it's like you ask a question, but let me make a big statement as well.
Right. It's a statement. It's not really a question.
Yeah. I think overall what we're looking at here is there are those who look over at Israel and say, that's not Israel. That's not the people of Israel, probably
Right.
is a better way of saying it. I was wondering if you could address that.
Yeah, these are people who have even if they have ancestors who happen to be members of the people of Israel, but they weren't raised in the tradition of how you keep Torah. They weren't raised in that tradition from parents who were raised from parents, all of whom all along in a direct chain knew that they were members of the people of Israel and preserved the heritage of Israel. Rather, these are people, even if they have Israelite ancestry in some way, there's no way they would have known without some DNA test or some means of research that weren't available until modern times. There's no way they would have known. They just pop up out of the blue and they say, hey, I'm an Israelite. And you people who actually have an ancient tradition, unbroken, you don't really know what you're talking about. But since I don't know Hebrew and I wouldn't even know it existed unless I had somehow come into contact with you or other people, secondhand contact with you, I wouldn't even know that Hebrew existed. But I know better than you. And so, but I don't know Hebrew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the alphabet that I only know exists, the Hebrew alphabet. I'm going to take it from you, who I don't consider legitimate, and now I'm gonna invent my own pronunciation of it. And now I'm gonna say I'm the real thing, and you're just phony. It's the most laughable, and this is a case of somebody who should be embarrassed. They should be embarrassed of themselves. They have, it's because this is not humility. This is audacity. It's audacious, and you cannot have a intellectually honest conversation with someone like that. They're not interested in such a conversation. So we will have this discussion for people who are intellectually honest and just want to know, honestly want to know, at least want to know both sides. So you see, he tried to. Can we leave the question on the screen,
Certainly.
at least for now? You see how he writes Yadim, Yadim. He would not even know that the Hebrew letter Yud makes the sound of a Y, like in yes, if Jews had not preserved that. Jews in the historical, the classical sense. He would have no clue. He's pronouncing it as a D, the letter Dalid, where he's writing Yadim. He's putting as a D because he adopted it from actual legitimate Jews of European ancestry, right? The Jews of Europe, whether mixed ancestry, Middle Eastern, and the early converts to Judaism, which we don't deny. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But the European ancestors of European Jewry, Ashkenazim, those European ancestors who converted and joined them, they joined into a Middle Eastern community. They didn't just pop up out of the blue and claim to replace historical Israel. Rather, they joined into the community of the Middle Eastern exiles who had come to Europe, and they married them and had children with them. And this happened all over the world. It happens in every religion and every community. There is no such thing as racial purity. What there is pure racism, not racial purity. But what I'm getting at is the fact that he uses a D in the word Yadim even shows us that he's, while hating probably Jews of Europe, most likely, while hating them, he wouldn't even know to use a D here if it weren't for them. And how do I know it's probably from the Jews of Europe? Because he puts a D. He puts a D instead of a DH or a TH, because this is a daled refuya. It's a daled without a dagesh, which is not supposed to be pronounced as a D. And you would know that if you had learned from Jews of the Middle East who had never left the Middle East. He doesn't even know any better, but to take things from Ashkenazi Jews, appropriate it, and then arrogantly claim to school the people that he has to learn from because he has no other source of knowledge because he's not a part of the continued chain. And again, that's nothing to be ashamed of. If you're not arrogant, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed about if you're not lording yourself over actual Israelites, imperfect as they are, but actual Israelites. But because he's being arrogant, because he's being chutzpahdik, then he should be embarrassed. It's shameful. All right, so let's get to the question. It's just audacious. Like, honestly, it blows me away the level of. This is, I think, a trend in Western society, not just with these jokes of Jews, jokes of Israelites, fake Israelites. It's not just an issue with them. I think it's a trend in Western society because people are basically making gods of themselves. This person would probably never say that, but he's elevating himself above everybody else while depending on them, but he's in denial of his dependence on them. So anyway, why does the state of Israel think that they are Israel? Because they were created by the actual historical people of Israel, not just of the communities of the exiles in Europe, but it is maintained and sustained in partnership with the ancient Israelite exiles of the Middle East and North Africa as well, and they all work together. They do not deny the legitimacy of each other. Ashkenazi Jews recognize the legitimacy of the Jews of the Middle East and of North Africa. Jews of North Africa recognize the legitimacy of Jews of Europe. They are not a bunch of racists. Are there individuals among them who are racist? Sure. But as a collective, they are not racist. Unlike these pseudo-Israelite groups that in their very foundation are racist. Their very identity is based on racism. Either it's that all Jews, all legitimate Israelites are black, or all legitimate Israelites are white. Right? Either way, their identity is based on racism. It's a joke. Really, they don't deserve the time of day. But people who are confused by them and are clearly sincere, they do deserve the time of day, and it's incumbent upon us to talk to them about it. I wish we had somebody who really has questions about this were on here, and we could have a respectful dialogue about it. Not the type of person who actually wrote this question, because they clearly are already they don't have a question. They're just asserting what they know, while appropriating from the actual Israelites. So the state of Israel does not claim inherently to be synonymous with the people of Israel. The state of Israel recognizes that it is an organization. It's a political organization, but it is a political organization that was created by the historical people of Israel for the purpose of ensuring their physical continuity, that they would be defended by people who seek to replace them, to destroy them. So it's the same thing in the United States. Would you say, why does the US government think that they are the American people? The US government doesn't think it's the American people. It's a representative of the American people. Anyway, this is clearly coming from an unnuanced person who doesn't think with enough depth, certainly doesn't think with the depth that they imagine they do. But let's go on to another question.
Okay. I think even if you look at the restoration of the language, if you look at the restoration of the land, you know, the two prophetic things that have happened that are huge, and to deny that those great manifestations of prophecy coming true are to the wrong people, if you will. It is weird. It's crazy.
And you know, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I remember now. Any person who even tries to reconstruct Hebrew, whether it's Black Hebrew, so-called Israelites, so-called Hebrews, and also so-called Black, because some of them aren't even really that Black. Like they're preserving the one drop rule of white racists. Just as long as they're not white, right? But one thing they have in common, not just the Black so-called Israelites, but all of these racist pseudo-Israelite groups, whether they're white or Black, they have something in common, and that is that any kind of reconstruction they try to do, they can't do a thing. They can't even make the mess of their reconstruction without first borrowing from actual Jews. They would not be able to reconstruct this alphabet if they had not taken the building blocks of their reconstruction from historical Jews. So they take it and then they spit on the people who they took it from. They're spitting on the, what do they call it? There's an expression, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Is that what it says? How do you say it?
That was exactly right. Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
I got one right. Like, even if they're butchering the pronunciation of the letters, but still the order of the letters, where did they get that from? They got it from Jews. If they didn't get it from a Jew, then they got it from someone who got it from a Jew. But you're not going to go more than a few persons back, a few degrees back, and you're going to hit a Jew. The type of Jew that they claim is not Jewish. So it's just a joke. Simply a joke. Let's keep going.
Now, by the way, the first question was by Hodaya, who was with us today. So I'll let her.
This is a different
one. No,
this is
same
me.
one.
Oh, okay.
So what is the 17th of Tammuz and what should we know about it?
So the 17th of Tammuz is a non-Torah commandment. So that's the first thing. It's not one of the 613 commandments. That means when you have doubts regarding it, unless you know for sure, or unless you're trusting some teacher who you're confident in, then you should be lenient. It's one of the fasts that's actually mentioned in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible. It's not mentioned by this term, but it's mentioned explicitly. And it is in commemoration of several terrible events that occurred to the Jewish people that either occurred on this day or around the same time, like within a few days or a week. We don't have to be obsessed, to assert that it happened exactly on the same exact day. Doesn't matter. It's in commemoration of those events that happened around the same time. And so what we do is we fast on this day, not fasting just for the sake of fasting, but fasting for the sake of reminding ourselves as a community and as individuals, reminding ourselves of the severity of what occurred on those days, and to awaken within ourselves a resolve not to repeat it. Not only to not repeat it, but to do what is necessary now in our lives to amend that tragedy that brought us to the current circumstance and brought us to the circumstance of the tragedies that the day commemorates. And so it is not, in the language of our sages in the Talmud, it is not an ideal to be fasting on this day. It's intended to be temporary. This day and other fast days, other than Yom Kippurim, are intended to be tools that awaken us to make the necessary changes to bring ourselves as a people to a point where we don't need to be fasting on this day anymore. So it is a mistake, and it's a mistake that's pervasive in the so-called ultra-Orthodox world. It is a mistake to think that this is a fast which is important as an end unto itself. It is not. So long as we're fasting on this day, something is awry among the people of Israel. In a time that we are not under severe persecution, it's not even a strict rabbinic requirement to fast on this day, but rather it's voluntary. During a time that it is severe persecution, then it is a rabbinic duty to fast on this day. And during a time where it is not severe persecution, but it's not even could be looked at as maybe not, but rather it's a time of victory, a period of independence of the people of Israel and great success and rejoicing. Then at that time, you are not supposed to fast on this day, but we should rejoice and turn our hearts to God and to his Torah with the spirit of rejoicing and thank him for having brought us to a time such as this. As the prophet stated, that the Almighty would turn our fasts into days of rejoicing. And that's instituted in rabbinic law as an actual legal duty. So the question is, and it should be a question, but for most in the religious Jewish world is not really deliberated as a question, whether or not we should even be celebrating it. I think so long as we don't, this is just my opinion, I think so long as we don't have political Jewish leadership in the land of Israel that have resolve, that are united with the resolve. They may have disputes among themselves, which is natural and healthy, but they should at least have a common resolve to defend ourselves, that we should defend ourselves as a people without shame, without worry of what the nations will think about us. And so until we have that level of confidence in the God of Israel and in the Torah and in God's promises that are in the Torah, until we have that level, even if we still disagree on certain nuances of how we keep commandments, but until we at least have that resolve that we shouldn't be ashamed of it, that there should be no debate among us whether or not we should destroy the people who want to destroy us. until we have that, I think it's legitimate to ask whether or not we should be fasting on this day. I think it's a cause to fast. But because we're certainly not under severe persecution, we're able to defend ourselves. It's within our means. I wouldn't say that this is a strict obligation. And Rav David Bar Haim has a lot of videos on this that I would encourage you guys to watch regarding the background of the 17th of Tammuz and the question of whether or not, or to what extent, it's obligatory in the current era. But some of the events that it commemorates is the breaking of the Ten Commandments in the physical form, when Moses descended and saw the golden calf and he broke the Ten Commandment tablets. The breaching of the walls of Jerusalem before the destruction in 70 AD. There are several things. Establishing of an idol in the temple in Jerusalem. There are a number of other events as well. But it should not be a day simply focused on the tragedies. It should be a day of community introspection and deliberation as to what we can do to turn it from a day of mourning to a day of rejoicing. So God commands us to keep his commandments with rejoicing. Any day of fasting and mourning, even if it's necessary as a means unto an end, but that end is not itself. It's necessary for to have a little introspection and mourning as a means unto an end to get us to a point of rejoicing, to make us say, we don't want to do this. This sucks. It's not fun. So what can we do to turn it around? If you're in a community or you're learning from a rabbi who only presents it as a time of mourning and with no deliberation of how to get us out of a state of mourning, I encourage you to find a different rabbi. That's it. Sha'elah habaha.
Well, this makes me think of the wedding huppah, which since the destruction of the temple has turned into this, flimsier, four people on the corners holding it up the thing
It's not
versus what used to be a structure almost, a
Right.
more
That's
rigid
right.
standalone item. And because of the temple's destruction, we don't overly enjoy or overly celebrate because of the temple's missing. But
Correct.
now that the temple is being worked on in the sense of planning and
it could be built.
clothing,
It could have been
exactly.
built yesterday. As a people, it's within our means. As a people, it's within our means. The only reason it hasn't been is because our leadership, too many of our leadership are cowards, and they clearly don't value the Torah enough, or don't have enough confidence in Hashem to do what we're commanded to do as a people.
Yeah.
And that is something to mourn. That is something to mourn, but also to think, what can we do to change it?
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is cowardice versus a fear of losing power, that if a Sanhedrin now takes the place of leadership.
That's cowardice as well. But yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. Let me see. All right. Julie asks, what is the significance of keeping kosher, and how does it reflect Jewish values of holiness?
So the popular response is God commanded kosher, and it shows that he wants us to be healthy because keeping kosher is more healthy. It's a good thing to try to find meaning in the commandments, but we should not mistake we shouldn't mistake the meaning that we read into the commandments that's not explicitly written there for what's explicitly written. All right. It's certainly debatable, at least with regard to certain aspects of the kosher laws. It's debatable whether the kosher food is more healthy than certain non-kosher foods. That's debatable. Certainly, if you eat kosher corn oil every day, it's not very healthy. You could eat potatoes every day. Go ahead.
That comes from a misunderstanding of clean and unclean as being kosher versus non-kosher. In other words, pig is bad for you, beef is good for you, or lamb is good for you, not recognizing that that lamb can be kosher or not kosher depending on how it
Correct.
was slaughtered.
The lamb,
Same
which is a
same
kosher
meat,
species, could be unkosher.
same
That's fine.
smell on the grill, no difference,
Yeah.
same flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But my point is that while it is good to try to read in extra meaning into the text, and maybe it is some hidden meaning behind the text that we didn't know, but so long as the meaning we're adding to the text is not explicit in the text, and all the more so if the sages of Israel didn't state it, so we're just kind of coming up with it in modern times, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it is wrong to state that that is the main purpose. If that were the main purpose, it would be stated in the text. So we need to ask ourselves, what is the purpose according to the text itself, what God commanded? And that is stated there explicitly. A reason for it is given, and that is that we should be distinct, that we should be separate, that we should be set apart for God as his holy nation. And so a people that eats together and that doesn't eat with other groups, they do other things together as well. They're more likely to marry among themselves and not marry among other nations. They're more likely to be less, to maintain their own values and be less influenced from the ever-changing cultural whims and stupidities of pop culture. But if you eat the same things as everybody else around you, you're more likely to go with the flow of pop culture. This is why there are certain rabbinic restrictions, and there are places and times and places to be lenient with them, but there are certain rabbinic restrictions on eating with non-Israelites, even if everything there is kosher. This is part of the reason, to maintain the principle of distinction among the people of Israel, where perhaps there may be a loophole around the kosher laws, meaning if the non-Israelite is being careful to make everything kosher, well, then we've kind of weakened its purpose of serving to keep us distinct. And we have this today. There are certain idolatrous communities that they may have good intentions, but they're still doing idolatry, and they're trying to keep the laws of kosher. They might even keep rabbinic laws of kosher. So here, there's been a breach in the commandments, not necessarily in our own, but in the functioning of the commandments. And so our sages come along and have created a fence to mend that breach. So that even if they're keeping the kosher laws very strictly, not even just with slaughtering for themselves according to halakha, but they're buying glatt kosher from the Orthodox establishment. All right, now Jews may feel more comfortable to intermingle with them, but they're still worshiping an idol. No, if they're worshiping an idol, you should not be fellowshipping with them, even if they're eating kosher food. So, but that's a rabbinic fence to sort of mend the breach due to their new innovation of keeping kosher while serving an idol. And it's not only with theological idolatry, it's also ideological. Right? Some people make a god of their political parties and replace the Torah with their political party. And in the same way that some might have a physical idol and put a kippah on it and say it's now Jewish because we gave it a Hebrew name, you can do the same thing with other things as well. It doesn't have to be a specific person. You can take a non-Jewish political ideology, put a kippah on it, give it gefilte fish, and call it tikkun olam, or social justice. And now, rename tikkun olam as social, which people do. Rename it as social justice, using not a Jewish definition, but using the non-Jewish definition of a specific political trend. And now it's suddenly Judaism. This is now Judaism. No, it's not. You just took a non-Jewish pig, ideological pig, put a kippah on it, and called it Yaakov. But it's not Yaakov. It's still a pig. Right? It doesn't have to just be idolatry of Jesus. There are other types of idolatries as well. And this is a big golden calf among the people of Israel. Not so much Jesus, but rather the political idolatry of replacing rabbis with non-Jewish political ideologues and demagogues. Right? That's a real issue today. And that doesn't mean everything in that political ideology is false. I'm not saying that it has no value. But to establish it as a golden calf that can't be questioned and you bow down to it like a fool, that's an idol. All right. Sha'elah haba'ah.
Michelle asks, how did Jewish prayer and worship like the Amidah or Shabbat services create a spiritual connection to God?
I like the word spiritual, but I don't like the word spiritual. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. Because it sounds so abstract that people don't necessarily mean the same things when they use it. I'm going to use the word spiritual here in the sense of meaningful, something that resonates with you deeply, but not so abstract that you can't say what it is. If you guys feel like spiritual they may be meaning something different, let me know.
I wonder if you could just remove the word spiritual and create a connection.
Or meaningful, just replace it with the word meaningful. But if you think that's a mistake on my part, speak up.
No, go ahead.
I don't think that Jewish prayer and worship create a meaningful connection to God automatically. I think we have to, there's a lot of words here that are used that can be used in this way, and that it could make it a meaningful question. But it's difficult to do so if we don't know what Jewish means, if we don't know what worship means, if we don't know what the Amidah is or is at least supposed to be. And a lot of these are spoken of in the Jewish world as a given, but they're not a given anymore. The term Jewish, oftentimes in the Jewish world, not both in the non-Jewish world, but also in the Jewish world, the term Jewish is often used in the sense of if a lot of Jews do it, then it's Jewish. But something is not Jewish just because a lot of Jews do it. You know, like a lot of Jews brush their teeth. So is now brushing your teeth something that's uniquely Jewish? No, it's not. A lot of Jews in the United States are very much politically on the left. So is now to be politically leftist Jewish? Well, in Israel, the majority are more politically on the right. So if just because a lot of Jews are doing it makes it Jewish, then now we have being opponents of oneself Jewish. Because the left usually juxtaposes itself or opposes itself to the right. But in Israel, the majority are on the right. And in the US, the majority are on the left, if we're talking about ethnic Jews at least. So which is it? It can't be that something is Jewish just because everybody's doing it. And that brings us to the Amidah as well. The Amidah is the main Jewish prayer, which is recited usually 3 times a day, every day, which corresponds to the daily offerings in the temple. But the way that it's done, you might say it's Jewish in the sense that it's done a certain way by most Jews when they do it. It's done a certain way. But does that mean that the way they do it is really Jewish in the sense that it is being done in the way that the sages of Israel instructed us to? Is it being done in the way that we find in the examples of the prophets of Israel as explicitly accounted in the text of the Jewish Bible? It's not. It's not. So you could look at Jewish prayer in 2 ways. Jewish prayer in the way that is commonly done, or Jewish prayer in the way that the foundations of the Jewish faith, the pillars of Jewish heritage established it. That would be Jewish prayer. And that's what we should strive for. Not just the way that everybody does it, kind of kala yad, as they say in Hebrew, like an afterthought. That's not Jewish prayer. In many communities, even when they're careful to pray 3 times a day, they often do it as an afterthought without much reverence. That's not Jewish. So in its ideal form, it is. How do we do it in a way that creates a meaningful connection to God? Well, there is room to think about how we could do it in a way that would create meaningful connection to God, and to think about that independently. There's a way to do that, and there's a place to do that. But first, let's just look at how the sages of Israel instructed us to do it. Very few people actually look at the source texts. They established the Amidah prayer, that central daily prayer, as a framework around which to incorporate your own personalized prayer into the framework of the Amidah. Almost nobody does this anymore. But that's actually part of the laws that our sages established that constitute the Amidah. So the first 3 blessings, the Amidah consists of 18 blessings on a regular day of the week, 18 blessings. There are 18 relatively short benedictions. The first 3 and the last 3 are never supposed to be improvised in. You're not supposed to just come up with your own words in the middle of it. The first 3 benedictions of the Amidah prayer are blessings of praise. You're not supposed to say that benediction and then in the middle of it create a long 7-minute list of God's praises, an exhaustive. You're not supposed to do that. And they make fun of it in the Talmud by saying such and such rabbi stated, the great, the mighty, the exalted, the most merciful, the most sublime, the most brilliant and compassionate and forgiving. And he goes on for 10 minutes like this. And then when he finally stopped, this other rabbi looked up and said, "That's it? That's it? That's all? Just 10 minutes of this?" I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Just 10 minutes? Why not 20 minutes? Have you exhausted the praises of God?" They wanted it to be short and sweet, because we shouldn't imagine that we can exhaust, that we can reach, that we can encapsulate in even the greatest praises of man, praises of God. It's impossible to do justice to God's praises. So they limited it to the 3 first benedictions of the Amidah, and don't do more than that. Don't improvise. And the last 3, give thanks. The last 3 are thanks. But the middle of the 18 blessings, those are requests. And there you should improvise according to what is respectful for the people around you. So if you're alone or you're at home and you have a spouse, and they will give you a lot more time than you could get away with in the synagogue service, then you can take a lot more time in those middle blessings to spill your heart before God, to be as verbose as you want to be. But don't think that the more you do it, the more convincing you're going to be to God. Just do it to the need of your own emotional distress. You don't have to be as rushed as you would be in a temple. And now I'm saying temple because I'm in an area where all they have is a temple, Reform synagogue. So you don't have to be as rushed as you would be in an Orthodox synagogue, a Beit Knesset, but you should still be cognizant of the burdens of your spouse while you're praying. If you're completely alone, you're on vacation somewhere, you can spend the whole day doing it if you have no other obligations. But if you're in a synagogue, you can still improvise your own prayers, subjective, spontaneous prayer in the middle blessings of the Amidah. And this is praiseworthy to do. The sages of Israel wanted us to do that. But you should be extra careful in a synagogue, because you don't want to burden the community, the congregants that you're standing in the midst of. You don't want to burden them, making them wait for you to finish before they can start the repetition. So just be mindful of the people around you while you're doing it. But how do you make it more spiritual, more meaningful? By making it more personal. And that's by improvising, giving personalized prayer in the middle blessings. And then with the first 3 and the last 3 blessings, actually think about the words as you say them. Think about the words. And you can also make it more meaningful by putting it to song with a melody that stirs you. And it may not be that the melody that's moving to me is moving to Victor or moving to Hodaya or to Emmanuel. So when you're in a community, if it's a public repetition, then you don't always have choice what melody is going to be used, or any melody at all for that matter. But when you're doing it by yourself, you can say it in a melody, and you can change up that melody. It's your choice. But the main thing is that you say it in a way that resonates with you, that encourages you to actually internalize the meaning of the words, so that it's not just a rote habit. Our sages condemned turning the Amidah into a rote ritual. That was the furthest from their intentions. And sadly, that's what it's become in the religious establishment. That is a problem. And the fact that they instructed us to kneel in the middle of the Amidah at certain points shows that they recognize the need to have certain points in the Amidah where we need to kind of wake up and stretch. You know, like when you have a long lesson, such as what I'm doing right now, and afterwards, the speaker will give the audience a break and say, okay, now stand up and stretch. This helps refresh your mental faculties so that you can focus better in the next section. So the sages of Israel did this in the Amidah with the bows. You bow down, you move a little bit, you bend over, right? And you take your time doing that, and then you stand back up. This helps kind of reset your focus. But when all it is, the entire thing is just a mindless mumbling of, and you're just swaying back and forth the same exact motion the whole time, you're not thinking. What you're actually thinking about is what you want to be doing on your vacation when you finish this this semester of yeshiva study, or what you want to do, what you need to do when you get back to work at the end of the weekend or after the weekend. That's not what's supposed to be happening. So the sages of Israel did not institute those places where you would bow down before God. They didn't do that arbitrarily just because they think, oh, it's fun to bow down. It helps wake you up, right? And if you're really not going to put any effort into serving God in prayer, nothing's going to help. But for someone who actually wants to serve God in prayer, it helps internalize the principles that are embedded in the words of the Amidah. If you say it with a melody that is moving to you, and you move and bow at the places that the sages said we should, that it's not a magic pill. It helps you on a psychological level to internalize those principles. And that's the main point of the Amidah. God already knows our needs before we cry out to him, no doubt. It's really to foment and strengthen the principles contained in the words of the Amidah in ourselves and in the community when we pray as a community. But when we're all doing it in a mindless way, it's not serving its purpose. It's just a show, and that's a shame. As Isaiah said, your service to me is nothing but empty words, the commandments of men. And we turn the sacred ancient prayer of Israel into mere commandments of men when we don't do it in the manner that the sages taught us to, which is in a meditative manner. Then it does become commandments of men in a negative sense. And we're mocking the commandments of God, basically. So God save us from that. That's it. That's my soapbox for the day on Jewish prayer. Any questions about that?
Is there a difference between prayer and worship?
The sages of the Mishnah said, what is the service of heart? Right? There's a reference to service of the heart in the Torah. God commanded us to serve him with our heart. The sages of Israel stated, Mahi avodah shebalev zot tefillah. What is the service of the heart? It is prayer. So when we serve God with our heart, that is prayer. It's the same thing. And that also means that if we're saying with words prayer, but it's without the heart, then it's not prayer. It's a mockery. It's a joke. They are one and the same. Tefillah, etymologically on a root level, on a linguistic root word level, regards deliberation, mental mental deliberation. But you're internalizing it on a deep level when you're doing it with all your heart. So your heart is in it. So it is the strengthening and the internalizing of the principles of Torah and the realigning of our values with the values that God wants us to have. And we do this through prayer. So it's not a hocus pocus thing. God does answer our prayer and he does hear our prayers. But part of our prayer is serving him. A big part, if not the essence of it, is serving him with our heart. And we do this by realigning our ways of thinking and living, by realigning them with God's ways. But we do that with our heart. You can't do it without your heart. If you don't put your heart in it, it's not really going to happen. That's why prayer is essential. God does not answer our prayers because we cried out to him and he got tired of hearing our moaning. God doesn't answer prayers because he's tired of hearing us cry or because we convinced him. He answers our prayers because we aligned our minds and our actions and our resolve with his will. That's why he answers our prayers. We realigned ourselves, and that is the exercise of prayer. So it kind of continues on after you pray the Amidah. It continues on as you're walking in his ways, consciously realigning yourself with his ways. But it starts with the mental deliberation. And that's why the word that is usually used for prayer, and there's many words in Hebrew for prayer, but the one usually used is tefillah, because it's from the root for deliberation, like a judge in a court. Only you are judging yourself in your own thoughts, reprioritizing things in your life. That's it. Sha'Allah. Yes, Sha'Allah.
If I could ask like a follow-up to that, like I in Christianity you have let us pray and then you have let us worship,
Yes.
and they look very different, and the two are not well, I mean, I guess they're kind of related, but in how is that different in Judaism?
So in halakha, usually avodah refers to the temple service, the service in the sacred temple, the national temple in Jerusalem. But it does often also refer to prayer. So it's kind of both. And this is why our daily prayers correspond to the temple service, because one is a reflection of the other. But really, it's not so much that our prayers are symbolizing the service in the temple, but rather the service in the temple is it corresponds to our prayers. And the altar is your heart, in the words of the prophet. I believe Jeremiah. Your heart is the altar.
So we
And
go
the
to the
sacrifice
temple
is
to
the
worship.
sacrifice is the sacrificing of the foreskin, the stubbornness covering your heart that prevents it from surrendering itself to God. Yes, sir. What would you ask?
So we go to the temple to worship more than I would say is a better term than to pray, even though they're
It includes request, but pray on an etymological level in English has more to do with requesting. But prayer in the halachic sense is more than just requesting. It's to constitute three main parts, our daily duty of prayer. It is praise, and it's not praise because God needs our prayer like some insecure man or woman, but rather it needs to have praise for us to remind ourselves and to remind the world of God's greatness. It's a call to humanity to admit, to confess what is obvious, the greatness of God, and to convict us, to give us a sense of conviction, which awakens our accountability. That's why praise is so important. God doesn't need our prayers. He is mit'aleh me'al kol barachot hillah. He is exalted and transcends even our greatest prayer and blessing. He doesn't need our praise, but we are duty bound to praise for the sake of ourselves and the world, to be able to bring ourselves to a mind frame that is in recognition of his greatness, so that we will surrender ourselves and our self-serving wills to his will. So praise is a necessary vehicle to awaken humanity and ourselves to surrender to God. So praise and then request, because it's difficult to give thanks when we're burdened with our immediate needs. And then after the request, thanksgiving. All right. So prayer, praise, request, and thanksgiving are the three main aspects of prayer. And according to the Maimonides' Code of Jewish Law in the Mishneh Torah, you don't fulfill your duty, your daily duty of prayer, unless you did those three types. You don't have to do them all at once, but it's preferable to do them all at once. That way you will know you won't neglect it later in the day. And you do it in the Amidah. But I stated here, the Rambam stated it in the Mishneh Torah, because even if you don't, you might want to do the Amidah prayer, but maybe you don't have access to a Jewish prayer book, you don't know it by memory, so you can do it in your own words. They were originally doing it in their own words, but that's your most basic format: praise, request, and thanksgiving. And don't overdo the praise, because no amount of praise will do justice to his greatness. Right? At some point it becomes a mockery of yourself, and even a mockery of God, heaven forbid. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think so.
Okay. What was it again?
About worship in Christian sense, there comes a time to get the band up and everyone sings
So it's not a band,
worshipful way.
But the band helps us get to that point. It's an aid, and it's not foreign to Torah. It's explicit even in the Torah itself that you can use instruments, but they're not an end to themselves, so they are not the worship.
Yeah.
The worship is the
if I could,
realignment of your heart. The worship is the
right.
realignment of your heart to God. That's it.
Right. So in Judaism, when you're praying the Amidah or when you're in prayer, the intention part is kind of where the Christianity would separate it. They were going to be intent and think on him and probably incorrectly visualize who we're worshiping.
Yeah.
And then later we'll talk to him. Whereas it seems to be putting
it's
it
much
together.
more emotional. It's all emotional and fixated on an imagined image of God, which heaven forbid.
Dangerous, very dangerous.
And they can still believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They can still believe that Jesus is heaven forbid, God as a man. They can still do those things. They can still believe those things without worshiping an image. Every Christian should ask themselves, do I worship the physical body of Jesus, which pooped, which peed, which slept, which had body odor? Do I worship these skin cells? Do I worship the fingernails that he had to clip his fingernails and throw them to the trash or somewhere? Do I worship that now? Or when I say I worship God in flesh, heaven forbid, what do you actually mean is that you worship the unimaginably incredible God who you perceived his personality revealed through Jesus. Is that what you mean? And is that the body stench and the poop of Jesus? Or is that the personality that's being revealed through him, according to your religion? Please tell me it is not the physical body of Jesus. And I know for plenty of Christians it's not. But they need to express this to drive the point home, because a lot of Christians don't get it. So when they're praising God and praying, they're imagining a physical body of Jesus. That body of Jesus, I would argue, even according to the gospel writers, is not God, and that is not the God in flesh. But the God in flesh, for argument's sake, is the character of God that was expressed through the body of Jesus. And that character is not synonymous with the body. So they could say he's 100% God and 100% man, but without conflating the two. When they understand that, then they can still be a Christian. They can still believe Jesus is the Messiah. They can still think he's God in man's, whatever that means, without committing idolatry. It's not idolatry until they're worshiping an image or a body, some kind of limitation of God in their minds. So they need to free their mind of that and worship the invisible God. The invisible God. Who would who even the heavens and the highest of heavens cannot contain. Lo yechalkulucha shamayim u'shmei shamayim. Even the heavens and the highest of heavens do not contain you. But that doesn't mean his character can't be revealed through some created thing. It can. God's character, not in all its fullness, but according to what we can handle, his character is revealed through created things. We should not mistake the vessel of revelation for the one behind the revelation, behind, so to speak, because even spatiality doesn't apply to him. It's not as if he's there, but he's not here, or he's here, but he's not there. The entire concept doesn't apply to him. So God sits on his throne in heaven. So is he not sitting on his throne here? No, God is on his throne everywhere because it's not literal. If you think it's literal, okay, so he's God, the Father, is sitting on his throne and Jesus is sitting next to him. Hashem Yishmor. But God is not on the throne here? Of course he's on the throne here. But you're a fool to think it's a literal throne. God is on the throne everywhere. The heavens just means to the highest expressible, the highest way we can express it as mere humans. That's all that it means. It doesn't mean physically up in the sky somewhere. It's not a different location. It's not even talking about a location. And when the New Testament writers were writing that Jesus sits at the right hand, they don't mean that he's literally sitting either. It's a figure of speech. I'm sure, even if they were heretics, I'm sure that they didn't mean literally sitting at the right hand. And there's a way I could prove that from the text, but I'm not going to do that right now. But I would suggest to you this. All it means is that he is the highest right-hand man, so to speak, of the Almighty. The highest servant, who, as the highest servant, is the one who would most not want you to worship him instead of his master. That's it. I'll leave you with that. But,
well, we do have another direction to go, but okay. I noticed a comment in Facebook from Darren. What are the origins of the Amidah? Was it incorporated into temple service, which I think is probably backwards here, during the first or second temple period? I would think go and bow the way back to the wilderness and the tabernacles, really where it probably begins, because I think he's saying, where did the Amidah, I don't know if he's saying the written down prayer or the whole service itself.
Okay. All we can go off of is classical Jewish literature. Other than that, we're just speculating. You might find some inscription here or there of someone who might be an Israelite bowing. There is such an at least one that I'm aware of an Israelite kneeling and bowing, but it's to a human king. Other than that, all we can go off of is the scripture, and we can make inferences. We can speculate from the script, from the written text, but we can't speculate or come up with any educated inference without the written text. That should be our starting point. There are many expressions of prayer, tefillah, in the Hebrew Bible that we can learn from, that teach us something about how the ancient Israelites prayed. None of it provides details of the Amidah as we have today, other than we do find examples of praise, request, and thanksgiving. We do find that, but we don't find that it was always at the same time. Excuse me. I think I should take a water break just a second.
So was it incorporated into temple service is an assumption during the first or second temple period, versus was temple service always pretty much the same
There's no
format.
doubt. There's no doubt that in the temple there were all kinds of customs that we don't even know about anymore. There's no doubt that when you have to do something official, you can't have everybody just doing their own thing. They had to coordinate with each other. No doubt, even in the desert, they certainly had certain practices that we don't know anything about anymore. It's just a practical necessity, just like any church or any office that has certain celebrations or ceremonies. When somebody retires, they do something and they have a way they do it, and it's not always written down. It's just the way it is. If you don't have some kind of tradition, for lack of a better word, then nothing. Tradition is a default. It's a default reality that just comes to exist even without intending for it to happen. So
Not
for sure
not a
they
negative, in other words.
not
The word.
no, it's
A lot of
necessary.
people look at it that way. Oh, well, it's just traditions of men. I'm like,
Yeah, they say that completely oblivious to their own traditions. Everybody has
oh,
traditions. The question is, how do we view those traditions? Do we view them as infallible, unquestionable? Are they static, and do we view them as not able to ever be changed in some way? That's the question. So we know that they probably had traditions for prayer in the first temple. It says that you should confess your sins in the temple. That's already in the Torah, that you should confess your sins. So on a busy day, you have to regulate how much time people are going to take confessing their sins. You know, one person might feel like they fulfilled that duty in 30 seconds. Another person, they might take 3 minutes, and another person 30 minutes. So if you get a bunch of people or some what do you call it? Some grassroots movement where people are taking a lot longer to pray. Well, the administrators of the temple, hashtag the priests, the Kohanim, they're going to have to do something about that and say, no, we're going to make sure it takes no more than 10 minutes because we're backing up here. We're having a backup in the temple. This is a practical necessity. And I can easily see them saying, okay, now we're going to streamline it, and we're going to have this basic text that we say, and that's going to be the confession. And we'll give you like a 1 minute moment of silence to confess more things that maybe we consider unspeakable. It's too explicit to say publicly, but you can say it quietly. But we have this thing that we've established to kind of streamline it. I'm sure this stuff happened. As far as the Amidah, the question specifically for the Amidah, according to Jewish tradition in classical Talmudic literature, it goes back to the time of Ezra HaSofer, Ezra the scribe. That's the Ezra in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. And it was instituted not just to streamline our prayers, but also to give a format, specifically to give a format as a guideline to re-habituate the Israelites who had begun assimilating in Babylon to reacclimate themselves to Israelite prayer. So it seems to me that it was following an older pre-existent format, but it was just more formalized. Like there may have already been a format before, but it got more formalized, and they drew from poetic texts that already existed at that time to weave a beautiful prayer that would flow on the lips. It would be easy to memorize because it has a little bit of rhyme and meter to it. And that makes things easier to remember. And in this way, it helps them also reacclimate to the Hebrew language. Because remember, it says there in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah that they were speaking Hasi Yehudith, Hasi Ashdodith. They were speaking half Jewish Hebrew and half Ashdodith, a non-Israelite language. So they were trying to refine their language. And so the Amidah was not only intended as a way to have personal devotion to God, but it was also consciously instituted by the sages of the men of the Great Assembly, consciously instituted not just as a way of personal devotion, but also as a way to revive, to resurrect the Hebrew language as the national language of the people of Israel. And it's very difficult to learn a language, especially on a large-scale population, to do so without having a common vocabulary, at least a baseline vocabulary, and without doing it with habitual, with making a habit of practicing it. So this is something that less religious Jews need to take in mind, take to heart, that if you want, and a lot of not so religious Jews are very patriotic for the modern reestablishment of Israel, but they don't know much Hebrew. So they should take to heart the Amidah was intended for this purpose. You don't have to fully embrace the black hat religious establishment to adopt the ancient tool that your ancestors created nearly 3,000 years ago, specifically for this purpose, to reacclimate you to the language of your forebears. That's what the Amidah is for. So start doing it. You don't have to do it exactly as the religious establishment does. You don't have to do it 3 times a day. Just do it once a day. Do it once a week for starters. But you're not going to learn Hebrew if you're only practicing once a week. You're not. And if you're not in the middle of a large Jewish community with a lot of Hebrew speakers, there's no other way you're going to do it except by repetition. So start with this. It'll give you basic terminology. And who knows, maybe if you do it in the way that the sages established, your ancestors who were prophets, if you do it in the way that they did, perhaps, who knows, you might just experience a little enlightenment of the God of your ancestors. When you fall on your knees and you bow before the one who you never dared to bow before, you never dared to lift your eyes up before in his presence. You never considered it even a possibility that you could have an encounter with the Lord of all existence who spoke to Abraham. The same one that spoke to Abraham can speak to you today. He does not change. For I am the eternal, I do not change. For this reason, O sons of Jacob, you are not consumed. Yeah. So nothing is all or nothing. That's a great way to be defeated, is to be like an all or nothing person, step by step. But the Amidah, according to Jewish tradition, was established by the men of the Great Assembly in the generation of Ezra. This is before Jesus, many, many centuries before Jesus. And in its current form, it has been influenced by the second exile. It's obvious because it includes requests for the gathering of the exiles and for the temple to be reestablished. But it is an ancient prayer. It's not just a evil white Khazarian what do you call it? For a conspiracy to bring the Christians under the evil tradition of the Jews. No, it pre-existed Christianity. And probably Jesus was praying it, almost certainly. In fact, there's even some academic research to suggest that the famous Lord's Prayer is an early example of an abbreviation of the Amidah, which is uncannily similar to the abbreviated Amidah that we still have even today, that most Jews don't even know about. Most Orthodox Jews don't know about, but there's an abbreviated Amidah. It's uncannily similar to the Lord's Prayer. And when Jesus taught that to his disciples, what did he say? What did he say? When you pray, this is how you should pray. Our Father, who art in heaven. He did not say, pray, dear Jesus, God the Son in human form, walk in here among us. That's not what he said. This is a perversion. They think they're preaching the true gospel. The true gospel, the authentic gospel, I dare say even of Jesus, is to worship the one God, the God of all existence, without partners, to cry out to him alone, and to not pray to any other. Not even the Son of Man, according to Jesus' own words, knows the day or the hour. So why do you think he's hearing your prayers? Why are you putting words in the words of Jesus, who you think is God? You're putting words in the mouth of God then. The true gospel is that God so loved the world that he forgives us of our foolish idolatry when we turn and serve him alone. And Israel is his messenger. If you think it's Jesus who's the Messiah, fine. The Messiah is a messenger. Well, whether or not he's a Messiah, that's a messenger. That is a representative of Israel. So God so loved the world that he gave his unique son. Who did God call his son? Israel. That's in the Torah. Jesus knew this. This is repeated in the Hebrew Bible multiple times, that Israel is his son. Israel is his messenger. So whether you think it's Jesus or you think it's Moses, all of these are representatives of Israel, the Son of God. God so loved the world that he gave his unique son, and whoever will accept this message, will believe in him, accept this message. What is that message? What did he say was the greatest commandment? Hear, O Israel, the Lord, the Eternal is your God, the Lord alone, the Lord alone. And you should serve him with all your heart. And what is the service of the heart? That is prayer. And when Jesus said how you should pray, he said, pray to the Father, the unseen God, who no eye can see. This is the message of Israel. That is the true gospel. So I call on our Christian fellows, brothers and sisters, to turn to the God of Israel, to repent, to abandon your idolatry, and stop dishonoring Jesus by exalting the messenger higher than the one who sent the message. To stop dishonoring Jesus by putting words in his mouth when all he said was, pray to the Father, pray to the Father, and that there is none other but him. That's it. I think we can wrap it up today. I'm okay with one more question if anybody has any comments or questions. But maybe in the next 15 or so minutes, we'll wrap it up. Any questions from viewers?
There was a couple of comments.
I probably offended everybody.
This was a good one. You know, to me, the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking of the visualization that we all have done in our past, especially in Christianity, and you know, we pray to the Father. Well, I gotta focus and think about Him, and I'm visualizing rather than, which is a really tricky thing. You know, it's a really tricky thing not to do that. How much more so not to do the messenger? How much more so, you know, to, yeah. Well, it's something that has to be unlearned, you know, or it's very common. Everyone's doing it. We need to stop. It's idolatry.
Just understand that when we say God is on the throne or God is in the heavens, don't forget that the same Bible says that the earth is his footstool. I don't see any feet up in the sky, but the earth is his footstool. So just remember, when we say our Father in heaven or anything along those lines, we don't mean a specific location. We're not talking about a spatial location, as if God is there, but he's not here, or he's more there than he's here. The entire concept does not apply to him. What it means, they've completely missed the whole point. What it means that God is on his throne in heaven is that he is in the most lofty position of authority, not position of body. It's not talking about the body. It's talking about position of authority, so that he is the highest imaginable authority. Why do we say heavens? Because it's the highest of heights that we can imagine as lowly creatures on earth. But it's just a symbol. It's a idiom. God is not in the heavens, nor is he on earth in some tangible sense, because he's not a body, you know. He created space, so he's not subject to space. So when we say our Father in heaven, we mean our Father on the throne of my life. Not in a physical throne up in the sky. On the throne of my life. You are the Lord of my life. You are the absolute supreme and highest highest authority that I answer to. You are the highest authority over me. That's what you're saying. When you say Father, you're recognizing that he is compassionate to you, that he is the most just and the highest example of kindness. So you're recognizing his knowledge, but we're saying all these things in a very short way, in a poetic way. That's what it means.
And for our final question, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Just my question is this: can a Jew work for a non-Jewish religious organization?
Could you say that again? I didn't hear you clearly.
Can a Jew, a practicing observant Jew, work for a non-Jewish religious organization?
Ah, wow. Okay. Are you asking if they can?
Yeah, if they can, or if there is there any repercussions, anything?
If it is idolatrous, and if you have sincere concern that maybe it's idolatrous, I would not. You
Okay.
know, there are so many other jobs. I'm sorry if it pays a lot, but I would not. If it's not idolatrous, then there's more room, you know. And I would like to learn more about that particular scenario if possible. I know it's not the place right now, but if it's idolatrous, it's not right. That's not right.
Okay, no,
We should not
that's
do
fine.
anything. We should not do anything to strengthen idolaters. Right? We should strengthen them in the truth, but we should not
Yeah,
strengthen them in their idolatry. That's a mistake.
yeah, no,
I think the
and
question. Go ahead.
I'm not leaning towards that, but I just wonder, like what the position is and what should one do if ever comes around that.
In fact, when we should so infrequently, it's one thing we live outside the land of Israel, so we're gonna, especially in the Western world, we're gonna see churches a lot more, and just because it's a church doesn't necessarily mean they're doing idolatry, but 9 times out of 10, that's what it's associated with. Whether or not it's intentional, of course, it's not intentional. They're not intending to worship contrary to God's word, but they are. They are. It's the same way. I'm not saying it's equivalent to murder, but in the same sense that even if somebody accidentally killed somebody, and so they may not have the same punishable guilt as somebody who intentionally killed someone, but they still killed somebody.
Yeah,
You still killed someone. So I believe that God is merciful and the true judge, and he will judge each person according to their knowledge and intellectual capacity. Some people just honestly are not so, they don't have, they're not the brightest bulb in the lamp shop. But I think God will have mercy on them. But it doesn't change the fact that it's idolatry. The same way if somebody, heaven forbid, accidentally kills someone, could be the sweetest, most sincere person on earth, but they still killed somebody. The act is the act. And our sages expected us to be so far from idolatry that they made a special blessing that we would say once in 30 days if we pass before a place of idolatry. They expected we would not be anywhere near it, if at all avoidable.
makes
That
sense.
blessing is a beautiful blessing. It's most worthy of praise and source of all blessing are you, O eternal, the powerful authority over us, King of all existence, who is long-suffering with those who transgress his will. It's a beautiful blessing. He's patient with them. He's waiting for them. What does it mean, erechapayim? It's a metaphor, but it means to be patient. Well, what does it mean, patient? That means he doesn't want them to be doing that. He's waiting for them to turn to him. This is, there are two extremes in the world, especially in religions. There's the heavy-handed, totalitarian, cruel zealots like ISIS, like much of the Islamic regimes of history. And then you have the lovey-dovey, God loves everything. I love you too much to help you avoid falling into a pit of eternal oblivion. I love you so much. You have those two things. I'm so noble and enlightened. You know, they bat their eyes. I'm vegan. Nothing against vegans. I'm very pro-vegan. Just not from an ideological, insane perspective. But I never kill a fly, but I don't care if your life has no meaning because I don't want you to judge me negative. There's some people who act all lovey-dovey, not because they're lovey-dovey, but because they're so insecure that they don't want people to view them negatively. They don't want to step on any toes, so they try to be nice to everybody. But in being nice to everybody, they're doing nothing to help people avoid serious hardships and pain in their life. You cannot be a righteous person. You cannot be a truly loving person and never step on toes. Same way you can never be a good parent if you always say yes to your kids. So God and the sages of Israel want us to have a type of Torah observance that is not the heavy-handed cruelness that you see with ISIS, but also not the silly, lovey-dovey, impotent faith that you see with other elements in Western society and some in the name of Judaism, where you're completely ineffective. The blessing of our sages for when we see a church or a temple with statues of any idol in it is to recall his patience for those who transgress his will. His patience, which means we're to walk in his ways, then we should also be patient. But that patience means we expect something good and we don't rely on miracles. So we should be proactively doing things to help actualize their abandonment of idolatry, that foolishness. It's a call not only to them to repent, but also to us to be the messengers of God, to be the Son of God in this world who brings his message of deliverance from foolishness, from stupidity, so that they can invest time in things that actually bring legitimate meaning and growth to humanity instead of spending millions and millions on gold idols and cathedrals while the needy are standing outside begging in the cold at the door, which of course is a result largely of lack of education and misprioritization of those who are educated enough that they should know better. But that's it. Any closing
Oh,
questions?
no, that's good.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Thank you.
I know it's it's hard because some non-Jewish religious institutions do a lot of nice humanitarian work, but if they're idolatrous, we should not be participating in that. There are some non-Jewish religious organizations that are not idolatrous, that aren't idolatrous. I would not encourage people to work with them either, but you don't have the problem of idolatry. So if you have truly limited options, and this is like the only good job in your tiny little town, I don't know where you're at. I'm not talking about you specifically, but whoever's listening. Then okay, maybe if they're not idolatrous, I don't know, Baha'i faith or what's the other one? Yeah, Baha'i, you have Sikhs. There's some other groups that they're not idolatrous. But we should minimize to all degree possible our strengthening religious organizations that are not in line with the Torah. King David wrote that to no other nation did he give his ordinances. They may have a lot in common with us, but if they do not recognize that the Torah is the everlasting word of the eternal, then it's a counterfeit. As individuals, they may be very good-hearted people, and we should be kind and considerate to them. We should not demonize them. A person is not a demon just because we don't see eye to eye with them. But the ideology has some error in it, and it can come back to bite us. And it often has and does and will continue to. So in a non-totalitarian way, we should strive to bring people to the only everlasting covenant between God and man, and that is the Torah. Is the Torah. There is no other heritage. It's the heritage of Jacob and all who desire to join with him. So if you want to join with the heritage that the God of Israel gave to humanity, the only heritage, know that the door is open for those who will accept it. Not on their terms, but on its terms. And it is compassionate. Yallah. Let's conclude. I'll pull up our closing prayer. Heather, would you let's get Mr. Victor to do just the first line. Just the first, up to the comma.
Modeh ani lifanecha Adonai Elohai.
All right, Heather.
I am grateful before you, Adonai, the powerful authority over me.
All right. Victor, are you okay with doing the next one?
Let's see. Shasamka,
Good. Shasamta.
Shasamta, I always drop this
Hel.
one.
Hel.
Helchi, Miyoshve,
Perfect. Shasamta halqi mi yoshve.
Beit HaMikdash.
One more time.
Midrash.
Perfect. All right, Heather, Tur Shalach.
I'm a little rusty.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so I'm grateful before you, O eternal, my God, that you have placed my portion among those who dwell in the house of study. Emmanuel or anybody else, would you like to read? Just up to the comma.
Yeah, I can give it a try too. I haven't been practicing as much.
We're not asking for
Yeah.
perfection. We're asking for practice.
Well, you're talking to a perfectionist, but just kidding. Below, we are in
Right here.
below. Okay, below Shemot. Oh,
All right. If the S is on the
Shemot.
left, if the
Yeah,
dot's on the
Shemot.
left, it's a sin. Sin. Left is a sin.
Simta. Yeah,
Sam.
Simta.
Sam. This vowel, the
Oh,
line is an ah. Sam.
What?
Samta. Samta.
Oh, Samta. Below Samta. Halaki. Halaki. Oh,
Helki.
Halki.
Anytime you see a yud with a dot in it, that means it's pronounced as a Y.
Yeah. Miyosve. Miyosve.
Yoshve.
Kuranot.
Beautiful. And I am grateful before you that you have not placed my portion among those who dwell idly on corners, street corners, with no purpose or aim in their life. Heather, Tur Shalach.
She'ani mashkim wahem mashkimim.
You want to translate?
That I'm not remembering what mashkimim is.
All right. Does it mean get up early or study first?
Get up early.
There
I
you
get
go.
up early and they get up early.
All right. Keep reading.
Ani mashkim livrei Torah. I get up early to the matters of Torah. Wohem mashkimim livvarim batalim. and they get up early to empty matters.
Beautiful. Victor, are you with us?
And
Amel means work hard. Go ahead.
Ani Amel Wahem Am Amalim.
Perfect. Let's translate it.
Something.
Amel means work hard.
Work hard. I work hard and they work hard.
Great.
Or yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Ani
Oh, good.
Amel. Ani Amel Wam Kabel
That's it. Ani Amel Qabel.
Sakar Wahim Amalim Waen
That's it.
Waem Mi Kabalim Sakar.
All right. Heather, you want to translate it?
I work hard and receive reward, and they work hard and do not receive reward.
Beautiful. Emmanuel, you want to read the next?
Yeah.
Roth means run. Roth means run.
Okay. Ani Rats Vehem Ratzim Ani Rats Lachaye Haolam Haba.
Oh boy.
Hem Ratzim.
When you do hey, make sure your throat is completely relaxed. It should be an unobstructed flow of air. So
Yeah.
not to be confused with cha. So not hem, but hem. Just relaxed exhale.
Lechem Ratzim Lever Sachar.
Leave
Lever Sachar.
leave air. If you see aleph with the vowel, that means break the syllables apart. They should be clearly distinct.
Okay.
Leave air.
Live air.
That's it.
Sachat.
All right. You want to translate it? I think you can do it. I'll help you.
Yeah, I think it was, let's see, I run, and they run for the world to, no, wait. They run and they run.
I run and they run.
For the
Period.
life and the world
That's
to
good.
come.
Good.
And they run for a pit of destruction.
That's it. All right. Do we have a volunteer for the personalized prayer to wrap us up? Pray for a safe Independence Day in the United States for those in the US, and for a blessed new month and a meaningful preparation for the upcoming fast days. Any volunteer?
You want to conclude with those words? You want to do that, Rabbi?
Just on that topic, I'm reading something on the chat first. Oh, you can see. No, you can't see. You can't see that.
I can try to remember all those points and.
Oh no! Don't stress about it. Don't just stress about it. Just whatever's on your heart.
Okay. Father in heaven, we We thank you for the opportunity that we have to learn together with Rabbi, and we pray for your blessings over the nation of the United States and for safety. And we pray for Israel to bring protection and success and with their enemies. And we also thank you for the life we have been given, and we pray for your guidance and wisdom that we may be submissive to your will and take what we learn and apply it to our daily life and to be a light and a blessing to those around us. And we thank you for your love and kindness. Amen.
Amen. Shavua
Amen.
tov, Chodesh tov,
So what
Mazal
else?
tov.
It's good to see you all. It's been a while.
Thank you for joining us, Sahi. It's good to see you all.